On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder will be diving into their season next week. But right now, we're diving into your mailbag questions. Can the rookies crack the rotation? And are the Thunder to historic levels?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. And of course, check out thunderonsi.com for all of your written Thunder content needs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get this season started with a big return at FanDuel. Your first $5 bet, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose, by going to FanDuel.com. And again, $5, win or lose, your first $5 bet turns into $200 in bonus bets. Under the weather today, we're going to play through it because we've got a big week. Starting out right now with your mailbag questions. Tomorrow, we'll have a special preseason preview of the Thunder season in the West. And I got together with our other Locked On hosts from Locked On Mavs, Locked On Nuggets, Locked On Wolves, Locked On Suns. And we discussed who should be at the top of the West. We discussed how the Thunder fare against those top teams. And is it really Oklahoma City against everybody else? I think you'll like that show. That's on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we'll recap the game against the Denver Nuggets, which should be a fun one. I mean, the Thunder, I think, will play some of their guys on Tuesday in Denver. So maybe a little bit of a dress rehearsal for their season opener in the Mile High City. And then on Thursday, we'll have the storylines which will define this Thunder season. On Friday, we'll recap that game against the Atlanta Hawks. And then we'll have you start it out on Monday with our season preview week. The Thunder not play until Thursday, so we'll have a whole week to preview this Thunder season, trying to line up some great guests for that week to have you covered from top to bottom on what to expect from the Thunder this season. But starting out with your mailbag questions, if you ever want to hop on a mailbag, you can, of course, tweet me at Rylan_Styles. You can tweet the show at LOThunderPod, email LOThunderPod, or go down to the comments on YouTube. So we'll start with your questions from Twitter. This question I posed, will you give me a question or even a hot take to react to? And one of the hot takes was that this Thunder season, assuming health, the Thunder will not lose double-digit regular season games from @ThunderTaker256. This is quite the take. This is quite the hot take. I cannot get there yet. I'm at 60-plus wins. I think that this team is that good, that deep. However, nobody is going to go on a limb and predict something like that because there's a very small chance of it actually happening and an even larger chance of it not happening and backfiring in your face. It's why there's no real reason for any of the Thunder players right now to say today or at media day that they're going to go win the championship, because only one out of 30 teams do a year. And the odds say you won't be that one. And that's all that's going to get remembered. And if they do go on to win the championship, nobody's pointing back to media day except for a small few. So, I'm not going to go that far where they're going to only lose less than, 9 games or less. And that would be a historic season for the Thunder. But they do have all the makings for it. Like, if there ever was a team to go and reach those historic heights, it's a team that, even in Adam Silver's NBA, you think that they're going to play every single night. You think that they're going to go out there and compete, right? Like, Shai's not taking days off. J-Dub and Chet aren't taking nights off. So your top of the line guys are not taking nights off on a team that is deep, on a team that could afford a night off here and there from your stars. You have one of the best coaches in the NBA, and you can play 10 to 13 guys who you feel really confident can go win you a basketball game. Not a lot of teams can say that. So taking into account all the teams that you're just flat better than, that if you even throw your C game out there, they can't beat you. Like, taking in those games as wins. Taking into the games where it's a toss-up and you're not going to lose every single toss-up. Like, you can wander down this path of the Thunder check all the boxes of what you need to be historic. They were a top 5 offense and top 5 defense last year, and nobody believes they'll regress. In fact, everyone unanimously agrees, from national to local, the fans to people who aren't fans of the Thunder, agree they got better. And yet, getting better for them is getting better than 57 wins, getting better than a top 5 offense, top 5 defense. And you look around at their deficiencies from a year ago, they're correcting everything. They have corrected nearly everything. And your what ifs now for the Thunder have to be what if they are historic, because we know that they're going to be top of the West good. We know that they're going to be contenders. So now it's like, well, what if this happens and that happens? Okay. What if the thing that Mark is harping on the most this training camp, which is shooting more threes, what if that happens? Because last year, the Thunder were the best team in basketball at 3-point percentage, but they only took the 16th most threes in the NBA. So what if they're the 5th best shooting team in basketball, but they take the 8th most threes in the NBA? Well, then all of a sudden this offense is killer, because you know what they're doing in the mid-range. You know what they're setting up at the rim with Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. Like, at that point, you are historic. The defense last year only lagged behind Minnesota, and by all accounts was elite. Any metric, eye test, stat, whatever, they were elite, and they had 2 unbelievably massive holes. It is unreal that they navigated having one of the worst defenders in the NBA in Josh Giddey starting games every single night, and not having a backup center, and relying on J-Will, who got better, who progressed individually, but was still a grounded rim protector. That you saw what happened in that Dallas series, where the Thunder were just awful without Holmgren on the floor. Now, not only can you go big and negate teams that have size, you can also just blanket games in 48 minutes of rim protection. So in a way, for the Thunder to get better, they have to get historic. And you can't bank on that happening, because that would be another Thunder anomaly. But the Thunder have been anomalies to this point. Like, they have been a team that bucks trends to this point. What if they now buck historic trends? I mean, they've been from bucking trends of what young teams are supposed to do, how much you can blow past your Vegas over-unders typically. Like, you can list off what this team's already accomplished, but man, that next gear for this team would be putting them in uncharted territory. It'd be putting them in rarely charted waters. So it's difficult to bank on. But if we all agree on those things, that the Thunder got vastly better, and we knew what they were a year ago, and we don't think anyone passed them by in any of those categories. For example, defense. Like, they were the 2nd team in the NBA defensively last year. And yeah, that was last year. But I think the Thunder got a whole lot better defensively with the additions of Caruso and Hartenstein. I don't think anyone made up the ground that they didn't have a year ago and then surpassed what the Thunder added. So, like, the Thunder, yes, you cannot bank on last year repeating. This is a whole new year. If you're projecting, the Thunder are still going to be a top 5 defense, and I would say the best defense in the NBA. Offensively, man, the fact that they were top 5 last year with all that they struggled with their starters, and yes, the starters was still a positive. Like, in the overall plus minus of that group, they were still, a +7, +12 of that group. But watching them play, they were laboring to get there. The parts did not fit together. They just somehow were able to, make it work for the most part. They navigated adverse situations. So if that's true, then the offense takes a leap forward, or a small step forward. And then you're looking at, again, the best offense in the sport a year ago, top 5 offense in the sport a year ago, getting better. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to say that they're going to win so many games that they only lose 9 or less. But it's a good thought exercise of, if this team is really as good or got so much better as we say that they did, that's really the only spot to land for Oklahoma City. Coming up, we'll talk about the rotation. Can the rookies crack that rotation, with AJ Mitchell looking like an actual NBA player on that 2-way deal? Did the Thunder get another steal? And Dillon Jones perhaps carving out a role for himself. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at FanDuel. Check out FanDuel today, because FanDuel is great. You want to get started today at FanDuel and start your season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So If you're looking in the middle of the game for live lines or planning things out weeks in advance or going for prop bets or over-unders or the spread, FanDuel is where you want to be. You get started today, you'll get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed with the placement of a $5 bet, win or lose. You're going to get that guaranteed bonus bet for you, $200. And if basketball is your speed, I know that we're in the thick of the NFL and college football seasons, but if basketball is where you're at, you can not only bet on the preseason, but you can already bet on the Thunder's opening night game against the Denver Nuggets, where the Thunder are 2.5-point underdogs on the road. You might want to hop on that before things change at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Folks, we're talking Thunder basketball. We're talking your mailbag questions. We've already talked from Thunder Taker 256 if the Thunder will be historic, but let's continue talking about the next question from Austin L87233. Not that they should or would, but what would you believe the percentage chance of the Thunder making an in-season trade would be? I know that this is a blazing hot topic, and it got made more so based upon, you went and traded for Hayward last year, and on the court it didn't work out. I think being glossed over in that trade was what it set up, right? Like it set up your cap space this summer for the ability to go and get Hartenstein in free agency. That way you're not scrambling days before free agency, trying to cobble up a trade to net the money. Like, yes, they could have went that route, but once you go that route, let's put it like this. When the Thunder cleared some money during the trade deadline, that was more so looked at and viewed at around the NBA as, hey, they're trying to get a veteran, trying to get better, trying to make this playoff push. If they do that 5 weeks later, 7 weeks later, whatever it was, call it June 27th, right before free agency, that's now looked as well, this Thunder team clearly wants to go get someone in free agency, so they clearly need this trade to happen. It's not a luxury. It's not a want. They need it to happen to go make their next move. So now they've got you over a barrel a little bit, and they're going to kind of squeeze everything that you can out of yourself. So that trade did work out and what it was intended to do. The added bonus, the sugar on top of the cherry on top of the sundae was going to be if Hayward could play. He couldn't. And so that's where it went awry. And then, Sam Presti had some comments throughout the summer and throughout the preseason about in-season trades and looking at them more closely and things like that. All that he said. I would put the percentage at like a 70% chance. And that's not because the Thunder don't have everything that they need or don't have, the tools on this roster to go win it all. The percentage is probably a little too high, but I just look at all the different ways that we see these things happen, right? Every single year. Like even Boston. Like Boston, who is vaunted as like the best team in the sport, one of the best ran teams in the sport, and the deepest team in the sport, and they have been for a couple of years now with this core of Brown and Tatum. They still went out and traded for Mike Muscala. Now, did it matter? Did they need to go trade for Mike Muscala? No, of course not. And all they really traded was 2 future second round picks and Justin Jackson. Like it didn't matter, right? Like that trade was irrelevant at the end of the day, but it still technically was a midseason trade. You look at whenever the Thunder were in that position where they were selling off players at the deadline, like George Hill was had for a couple second round picks, and he didn't make a massive dent in what Milwaukee was trying to do, and he didn't revolutionize what trajectory the Bucks were on, but it was just something. And so I look around this roster, and not only do they have a roster spot vacant to where they could truly take on some veteran, some equivalent of Mike Muscala, some equivalent of George Hill for just 2 second round picks, and let's see what happens. Right? They have that vacant roster spot. But I look around this roster, and the first guy you go to, of course, is Ousmane Dieng, who is eligible for his option and eligible for an extension, and hasn't really shown much NBA signs to this point, except for his progression in the G League. Would it stun you if they just traded Oos in a second for some veteran? No. Would it stun you if they just traded for a couple seconds to jump the line in the buyout market? Because look, if they're going to keep this open roster spot, part of that is a break glass in case of emergency that you pop up and see you need something come the buyout market. And the Thunder are still, and Oklahoma City is still, while it's getting better, not the free agency, attraction that other teams are. Now they do hold a huge leg up because if you're a veteran who got bought out, joining a 60-win team is pretty appealing. Trying to go win a ring is pretty appealing, but so is going to LA with LeBron, who they'll be in the buyout conversation and these other big markets around the league. So you can jump the line and say, hey, whoa. If you're going to buy this guy out, just trade him to OKC. We'll give you a couple seconds. So because of all those factors, without even diving into anything like earth-shattering, which I don't think will happen, I've got to put it like a 70% chance of happening because there's just so many avenues where it could, and it still fall in line with the vision that the Thunder have, which I think right now the vision is similar to what it was a couple years ago. Hey, just get this team on the floor. Let's see where they stand after giving them a whole run in the postseason and in the season, and kind of go on from there. OKC BR Hoops hot take is that Hartenstein is the top 4 player on this Thunder team. Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I think it's between him or Caruso, and you can throw Lou Dort in there as well. But like Hartenstein's great, and Hartenstein's addition is going to be felt more so on the court, on the eye test, and on what he does for everybody else. So, for example, like his ability to set the screen and free up J-Dub, that doesn't show up anywhere except for watching it happen. But it's going to be felt in a big way. And so, like, of impact, I would say he's top 4. Now, you can split hairs with who's more talented and who's more productive and whatever. But of impact, I would say he's top 4 as well. Smokey Barra says, I got 2 firsts. Is Dillon Jones going to force OKC's hand into playing him like they did like Casey Wallace did a year ago? And do you see how Ryan Dunn is playing? And you are still not convinced he's going to be okay in the NBA. So let's tackle Dillon Jones first, because Dillon Jones had another question mark in here from somebody. And once I find that question, I'll give you credit as well. But Dillon Jones, like, he's been stellar, and he's been nothing short of that in the preseason. He's said all the right things. He's done all the right things. The players have raved about him and raved about his curiosity, raved about how much he wants to learn and get better and grow. And Dillon Jones has looked every bit the part of an NBA player. He also has the benefit of, Jay Will's sideline, Kenrich's sideline. They're at least sidelined through the preseason. We saw Jay Will get some work in on the court after practice this weekend. Perhaps those guys can return in the regular season, but perhaps they need another week or 2 to ramp up and return to play and return to performance. So Dillon Jones does have a chance here to crack that rotation. Now, will it be to this extent of Casey Wallace? No, I don't think that he'll play all 82 games and he'll become that valuable to the team where you just cannot envision a game where he doesn't play. But he will have his chance, and he does fill some some holes for this team in case that you do see these guys go down. Where right now, if the season started in Denver Tuesday instead of next Thursday, right now he's your best small ball 5, like plain simple, cut and dry. So Dillon Jones will play. I'm not ready to go so far as to say he'll play all 82 like Casey Wallace did a year ago. As for Ryan Dunn, he had a great game the other day, and he's been really good for the Suns. The Suns feel good about their draft picks. I love the Suns team. I hope for Ryan Dunn it works out, but I'm also not ready to crown him. Like, I'm not going to move off any draft opinion after a preseason and after a couple games. Let's see if the shooting can translate and can make itself a reality in the NBA. I'm not certain it will, and that's a big, massive red flag. And especially what you're seeing here, preseason is very much internal, and a lot of the regular season is internal. Like, a lot of the regular season, you give them a packet of like, hey, here's what to watch for. A lot of the regular season, you're focused on building yourself up by the foundation and building your house of just what you rely on as an NBA team. Not so much what the other team does well, but especially you're not doing that in the preseason. The preseason is all about you, to where let's see Ryan Dunn get game plan for. Let's see these guys ignore him. Let's see what he can do in the real season. So he's been good. I will fully admit he's been good in the preseason, but I'm not ready to just like move off that hill. Coming up, we've got more of your mailbag questions. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Here talking Thunder basketball, your mailbag questions. This one from at MK325491. The Thunder have the best 2 big man combo in the league. I think so. I think that this is the best two-man lineup in the league for big men. The way that they can cover the game in 48 minutes of rim protection and the ability to play as big as they can is now kind of a rarity of like now that you see Minnesota traded Cat to New York. They've got Randall back, and Randall does not add that same element. By the same token, New York, obviously a different conference, so it only really matters twice a year and then perhaps in the finals. But New York, they do have Cat, they do have Mitchell Robinson, but they're so weak at that position in terms of depth. Once Mitchell comes back in the new year, because he's out for the entire 2024 portion of this season, once he comes back in the new year, you're probably not going to want them to share the floor together that much because you want to elongate your depth in the front court. So I just think that the Thunder, oddly enough, and I said this on the preview show tomorrow, oddly enough, they went from where's all the size? They have no size to, oh yeah, on top of what we just spent 20 minutes raving about, yeah, they're also the biggest team in the NBA too. Like they also accomplished that. Thunder Topic says, let's assume there's a bracket of all 17 Thunder basketball teams in a March Madness style tournament. How far will this team make it, and who do they match up with in the finals? I would say that they match up with probably the 2016 team in the finals. And, we've seen Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook do it on the biggest stages. We have not quite seen Chet and J-Dub handle the offensive load on the biggest stage yet, although just be it in one attempt. I think from top to bottom, though, this is the best Thunder team in Thunder history. I mean, we can talk hypothetical one-game sample sizes in March Madness. Hypothetical tournaments will never happen. Bottom line is, this is the best Thunder team in Thunder history. I mean, I know that you have the nostalgia. I know that you have two of the best players to ever touch the floor. But from top to bottom and on the sidelines as the head coach, this is the best Thunder team in Thunder history. And it's going to be a fun year to watch them. Going now to Jared and at Thunder Hour. Hartenstein is Jokic light. Sure. I mean, the same way that I'm Andrew Schlecht light. I mean, I don't. Andrew Schlecht is a billion times up there. Jokic is the best player in the sport. And I think that this Thunder team is just spectacular. So, can Hartenstein deliver some of the same things as Jokic? Sure. I mean, he can deliver the high post creation. He can play defense at a high level. He can't space the floor in terms of like a shooter that Jokic can, at least not to this point. But, they have similar identities, but Jokic is the best player in the world. They offer kind of different things in that way. But it was a lot of fun. We'll talk more about AJ Mitchell's role on the next show and about storylines for this season coming up. But thank you for all your questions. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.